If tales of weird relics from vanished civilizations have ever made you shiver, make us wonder about the past, or enigmatic remnants that are mute beneath the ages' dust, then you're at the correct place. Today, we'll take you on an adventure through unsolved mysteries from secret ancient structures tucked away in the desert. Prepare to ask questions and let your imagination go wild as you examine symbols that have been silent for thousands of years. Keep your seatbelt fastened as we delve into mysteries that no one has yet to solve. Today's surprise, but first, if you like and subscribe to this video beforehand, you'll be extremely lucky, resolves the mystery of the giants of the Lovelock Cave. Thousands of years ago, the Paiute people of Nevada's harsh deserts have a weird folklore about a group of red-haired giants called the sagittarius. According to their accounts, these giants were ferocious and scary, causing dread to spread over the country. To halt this nightmare of hunting and eating humans, the surrounding tribes banded together to push the giants into a cave and exterminated them until they were completely gone. For decades, this story was only passed down orally until people started to question whether the legend had any veracity after archaeological findings at Lovelock Cave. David Pugh and James Hart, two miners, began excavating in the cave in 1911 in order to gather back guano for fertilizer. However, they discovered thousands of odd objects instead of merely bat droppings, such as oversized sandals up to 15 inches long, bird traps, and handmade baskets. All are official. A year later, excavation was conducted under the direction of Llewellyn Loud from the University of California. He and his group gathered over 10,000 items, including human bones. Early accounts even mention mummified bodies and extremely huge skeletons. Some of the red-haired skeletons were over 6.5 feet tall, which prompted renewed fascination with big tales. Yet the majority of those enormous skeletons eventually disappeared, leaving behind more questions than answers. Lovelock Cave is a true archaeological treasure trove, but it is also a profound riddle. The cave is over 30 feet broad and more than 150 feet long. Archaeologists discovered enormous footwear and a massive handprint pressed into stone and evidence of fire close to the entrance, details that align with the port myth of the Sadaka being burned out. Some of the red-haired mummies were mentioned in early records. The female was around 6.5 feet tall, while the male was considerably taller. According to contemporary experts, the red hair may be the consequence of oxidation or mineral staining over time, and although the skeletons were not very large, their real height was closer to 5 feet 11 inches. The procedure of removing the Lovelock enigma has persisted for generations and is still controversial, dating back to 1912. Numerous objects were lost or ended up in private collections as a result of the excavation's inadequate documentation. Verified that the cave was utilized constantly between approximately 1500 BCE and 440 CE, and that the world's earliest duck decoys were discovered here. Modern DNA research revealed that some of the human bones had Eurasian roots, but discovered no evidence of giants. Instead, the massive skeletons that were formerly on exhibit at the Humboldt Museum have since been reared out of respect for indigenous peoples, making it almost hard to conduct additional study. Numerous theories have been suggested as an explanation for the Sataka legend. Scientists think that the ancient Lovelock people were just taller than ordinary. The Paiute benefited from improved nutrition, and red hair can happen spontaneously or as a result of environmental factors. The 15-inch sandals might have belonged to a person who was almost 2 meters tall, or maybe the story was just made up over time. Believers and historians maintain that the evidence of red hair and burning is authentic, while some even link these to the biblical Nephilim or to aliens, but these theories have never been supported by scientific data. The Lovelock giants, whether real or based on tradition, serve as a potent reminder of the power of folklore. The existence of the Sadaka demonstrates to us the diversity and mystique of ancient humanity, especially if they are just myth. Their tale still captures the Paiute people's anxieties about a formidable foe. The enigma of the White Shaman Rock. The ancient clans of hunter-gatherers who left behind enigmatic limestone cliffs where the Pecos River meets the Rio Grande were discovered on the sun-baked hill thousands of years ago. Among the more than 300 rock art locations in this area, there are marks on the lower Pecos Canyon land's rock walls. Located in a little rock cove only a few yards away, the White Shaman Rock Shelter is a desert hidden gem. This painting, which is 13 feet high and 26 feet long, is a thick tapestry of figures of people and animals as well as abstract symbols that appear to light up on the stone when the sun sets. The white shaman in this art is a headless figure whose pale body is highlighted by the moonlight. Between 2500 BCE and 500 CE, the POS river style was developed. Archaeologists were puzzled for decades by the actual significance of these odd pictures. Some thought the mural was the artwork by shamans that shows mystical experiences of visions during ceremonies with a mezcal plant. But in 1989, as soon as artist Carolyn Boyd stepped inside the rock shelter, she realized that these patterns were anything but random. Like a contemporary mural drawn in by the mystery, the white shaman was a well-crafted tale. Boyd gave up painting to pursue a career as an archaeologist, spending over 3 decades of her life trying to decipher the white shaman's secrets. Reaching this location requires a difficult journey over the Chihuahuan Desert. Under the blazing sun, which can reach 100 degrees Fahrenheit, descend a steep slope that is almost 250 feet high. Only the most ardent travel all the way out here. But when you do stand in front of the mural, all weariness transcends time. The figures, some as tall as 20 feet and others as small as lines, appear to be telling a story, as one visitor once remarked. It seems like I can hear the echoes of ancient people's whispers through this canyon. Boyd concluded, following years of investigation, that the white shaman mural tells the tale of the sun's birth and the beginning of time itself in addition to being a piece of art. She suggested in her book The White Shaman Mural that the Tuscan beliefs are reflected in the symbols cut into the rock. The most significant hint came from a Huicol shaman who cried about the forefathers of tribes like the Nahua and Huicol in Mexico. When he viewed the painting, he recognized the winding snake and other symbols from his own people's creation tale, symbolized by the figures with feathered headdresses or the lines separating the material and spiritual realms, which depict the shaman's path. These components have been preserved for 4,000 years, creating the white shaman. Despite being one of North America's oldest graphic documents, not everyone concurs with Boyd's assessment. Archaeologists speculate that these pictures could be associated with hunting customs or represent shaman power displays in the society. Others caution that incorporating contemporary mythology into old artwork may skew its meaning. Although even the most doubtful must acknowledge that this is a unique treasure and that the white shaman is a unique component of it. Today, the Wider Museum and the Shumla Archaeological Research preserve the white shaman mural as part of the land's legacy. Boyd herself founded the center, and its September through May tours attract adventurers who aren't afraid of the weather for a brief look at this masterwork. And despite scientific advancements, the white shaman's enigma still persists. Can we really comprehend the narrative these ancient people wish to convey? Or are we merely glimpsing a world that has vanished? The mystery surrounding the bong pipes, which vanished in 1996. In a rural area close to the city of Delanau in China's Qinghai province, a writer by the name of Bayu uncovered an odd find while investigating. While strolling along a cliff in the Bong Mountains, he chanced to notice a triangular 6 m high cave that appears to have been meticulously chiseled out by someone. When he entered, he was astounded to see that there were so many rust-colored metal objects strewn all over the stone walls and floor. Pipes with diameters varying from a few millimeters to almost 40 centimeters, some of these. Outside the cave, pipelines extended all the way to the coast of Lake Tozan, running along the mountainside. At first view, the 80-meter distant saltwater lake appeared to be some kind of mechanism that had been purposefully placed. However, the location, a lonely, dry region at an elevation of around 2,800 meters, made the discovery even more startling. Archaeologists observed that there were almost no signs of human occupancy in this area for tens of thousands of years, which made the existence of these metal pipelines all the more enigmatic. Following Chinese media coverage of the discovery in 2002, a surge of researchers got to work. The Beijing Institute of Geology gathered pipe samples for examination, which revealed iron oxide made up the majority of the pipe's composition, with an additional 8% of their content being unknown. According to amazing dating techniques, these pipes may have originated as long as 150,000 years ago, during a period when humanity had only recently found fire and the most basic tools. Nobody could explain why such a complicated iron pipe system occurred in an area where there is no evidence of old metallurgy. Several explanations have been put forth. Some people think these are the result of extraterrestrials or the remains of a vanished ancient civilization, as the region has a pyramid-shaped mountain and a large salt lake are two features that conjure up some buried earth. Some have even proposed that these pipes are remnants of UFO technology, although researchers have offered more straightforward answers. Other investigations have found evidence of plant stuff and growth rings within the pipes. In accordance with this notion, the pipes might just be the remains of old tree roots that eventually calcified as a result of the Aries' distinct iron-rich environment, which is actually a comparable occurrence in Louisiana, where metal shells encasing fossilized tree roots have been discovered. According to inspections, the pipelines had significant levels of carbon and other mineral indicators, confirming this natural phenomena. Not everyone is persuaded by the argument of why the pipes are so uniformly sized and organized in an engineered way. So, why do they live in an area that was formerly a marsh but is now completely dry? Additionally, 8% of the material is still unidentified. More than 20 years have gone by since the discovery of unidentified material, and some samples even contained faint radioactive residues. Although the Bong Pipe's discovery and mystery are still unknown, the location has grown to be a popular tourist destination. Despite its remoteness and closeness to a military installation, some geologists think that the area's remoteness has hindered study chances. The Qinghai Plateau's complicated geological past, where ancient floods may have occurred, holds the true solution: iron-rich sediment layers. But for those who enjoy mysteries, the Bong Pipes continue to serve as a reminder that there are still countless aspects of our planet that we still don't fully comprehend. These natural fossils are proof of a lost world. The mystery of the Rapa Nui Mo'i statues, which are often referred to as the Easter Island. Easter Island is a tiny island in the Pacific Ocean that is over 2,300 meters from Chile's coastline. Though it is just roughly 14 miles long and 7 miles wide, it is said to be the most remote inhabited location on Earth. Nearly 1,000 enormous moai were left behind by the people of Rapa Nui in a secluded ocean, leaving one of humanity's biggest mysteries. Some of these monuments are 33 feet tall and tens of tons in weight. The origins of these statues and the reasons why many were ultimately overthrown still captivate people today. Rapa Nui's history was initially documented in 1722. Jacob Roggeveen, a Dutch adventurer, called the island Easter Island after his arrival on Easter Sunday. He described locals worshipping before imposing stone monuments as though they were gods. Yet only a few centuries later, the majority of the moai had fallen onto the parched grass. So what actually transpired on this island? The majority of the moai statues were sculpted at Reno Raraku, an extinct volcano. A soft, easily carved form of compressed volcanic ash made up 95% of the moai, although some others, such as the well-known Hahakanaya at the British Museum, were made with much tougher basalt stone. Some figures also wore red stone caps that are thought to symbolize the hair and spiritual might of tribal chiefs. The biggest problem, however, was how the Rapa Nui people moved these enormous stones, some weighing up to 86 kilograms, using only ropes and stone tools. One of the most well-known theories is that the ancient islanders utilized ropes to walk loads across the island's rough terrain. They would connect ropes to both sides of a statue, stand it upright, and then rock it back and forth, making it inch ahead until it arrived at its destination, as demonstrated by contemporary experiments employing 5-ton replicas. Rapa Nui tales claim that the moai walked themselves, moved by the mana, even though this approach is feasible with only a few dozen individuals. The metaphysical explanation provided by their chief spiritual authority for something that nevertheless seems inconceivable to others felt that the statues were actually moved on logs or rollers, which may have contributed to the island's deforestation. Around 1200, when the first settlers arrived, Rapa Nui was blanketed in tall palm woods. By the 18th century, the island was almost completely desolate, perhaps as a result of growing farming or the requirement for lumber to move the statues. Another significant query is why, upon the arrival of Europeans in 1722, the construction of the moai abruptly ceased. At the Reno Raraku quarry, some statues remain incomplete, such as El Gigant, a massive statue that is more than 70 feet tall and weighing up to 200 tons, which was never finished. Some academics think that the collapse of resources or war sickness has also occurred in Rapa Nui's history after deforestation caused their civilization to collapse. The island was devastated by disease and the slave trade after coming into contact with Europeans, and its population fell from thousands to just 111 by 1877. The majority of the Moai were probably destroyed. Some monuments, like Hoa Hakanaya, were removed because of violence or because people no longer believed in their gods. They are still the subject of intense discussion regarding their repatriation to Rapa Nui, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Due to the efforts of locals, numerous Moai have been repaired at this historic monument, which welcomes thousands of visitors annually. Archaeologists and communities continue to face new difficulties like wildfires and climate change, which have devastated hundreds of monuments, endangering this priceless heritage. The mystery surrounding the authorized DWI bronzes. In 1929, in a sleepy community in China's Sichuan province, a farmer was excavating an irrigation ditch when he discovered some jade and shards of stone with strange forms. He was unaware that he had discovered evidence of a civilization that was more than 3,000 years old. Brickleys didn't find it until 1986, after it had been nearly forgotten. The world really started to take notice of two enormous ritual sites. An archaeologist discovered more than 1,000 distinct items, including enormous copper masks with oddly projecting eyes, over 8.5-foot-tall human statues, and a 4-meter-tall bronze tree with birds perched atop its branches and hundreds of objects crafted from golden jade. The Suningdui culture is represented by its civilization that flourished between 2700 and 1000 BCE, in the same era as the northern Chinese Shang dynasty. But in contrast to the Shang, the Sendui people did not leave any writing or documents. The only means by which we may unravel the mysteries of this ancient kingdom are these metal objects. The most remarkable artifact discovered in Saningdui is a massive bronze mask discovered in 2021 with protruding eyes and massive ears that seem almost unearthly or godlike. According to archaeologists, in the past, people would wear these masks during ancestor transformation ceremonies or mount them on wooden poles. Some masks even possess markings close to their ears and red paint traces on their lips, as though they were roused to participate in special celebrations. Another outstanding 8.5-foot-tall bronze monument that portrays a figure with two enormous bracelets and cupped palms, seemingly holding a sacred object. 2019 saw a new wave of astonishing findings came from excavations at Sangsingdui. 6 new ritual pits were discovered between 2020 and 2022 near the first two. Archaeologists discovered more than 13,000 new items, including the oldest piece of silk ever discovered in Sichuan, a gold mask half a kilogram in weight, and an odd bronze figurine with a snake's body and a human head. The excavation team's leader thinks silk was also utilized in ceremonies to link the supernatural and human realms. But what's even more puzzling about Sunqing Dui is that the majority of the objects were intentionally destroyed or burned prior to burial. Many archaeologists believe this was a component of religious rituals or sacrifices to ancestors, but nobody is certain and has not explained why. Approximately 1100 BC, the whole city spanning more than 3.6 kilometers was abruptly discontinued. The actual significance of a DUI sentence is still up for question. According to academics, it was only a commerce hub that was greatly impacted by Southeast Asian or Shang cultures, not in sovereign kingdom, while some cite artifacts like as old ritual wine cups and statues of human-headed snakes as proof of cultural mingling with the Zhou dynasty. Some daring ideas even propose that the big-nosed, big-eyed masks are associated with populations from Central Asia or ancient India, although there is now no conclusive evidence. With a contemporary museum showcasing its stunning architecture, Saningdui is being considered as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. The topic of why the Saningdui culture disappeared remains unanswered despite continued archaeological treasure excavations. These ceremonial pits were either a last prayer before calamity or an indication that a civilization was changing into a new one. In 1862, a farmer was cleaning soil when the mystery of the Met colossal heads emerged. He found a big stone sticking out of the earth. Upon closer inspection, he saw that it was a sculpted human face. It was the first enormous head ever recorded, with a stone more than 5 feet tall with remarkable features, full lips, a wide nose, and deeply set eyes. There have been 17 of these heads discovered, and they range in age from approximately 1,400 to 900 BCE. These are some of the meme civilization's most notable legacies. The first great culture that established the Aztec and Maya civilizations. The Olmec heads laid the foundation for them, and they are breathtaking in their immense size. They can weigh anywhere between 6 and 50 tons and range in height from more than a meter to more than 3 meters. They were formed from the strong volcanic rock known as basalt, which was quarried from the Tux Mountains and occasionally more than 90 miles away from where the statues were put up. But what's even more amazing is that the mech didn't have a wheel or any metal tools. According to archaeologists, they most likely used wooden raft to carry the stones downriver before rolling them overland on logs. Up to 1,500 workers might have been needed to make the wooden logs for each figure. Mimic artists spent months carving the heads using even more difficult stones, such as jade or obsidian, and occasionally even polishing the surfaces with moist sand and reeds to create the lie-like facial characteristics. What makes the enigma even more intriguing is that every head is unusual, with distinctive facial characteristics and headpieces that are never the same. Some are embellished with geometric patterns, while others have jaguar claws, which has inspired many theories regarding their function. According to some academics, the heads are carved portraits of deceased monarchs. Others believe that the headpiece shows their authority or their duties in the Mesoamerican holy ball game. Some might have been associated with sacrificial practices, particularly given that the backs of certain figures resemble altars. Heads also have intriguing backstories. Some were purposefully damaged or relocated from their original positions to deprive a deceased ruler of their authority or to signal a change of social power. In 2009 at La Venta, sadly, 3 members of a religious sect doused their heads with salt and oil as part of an old custom. There was previously a contentious notion that suggested an African connection due to the thick, wide noses and lips on the skulls, although recent studies have revealed that these characteristics are typical of the indigenous people of Tabasco and Veracruz. Even now, archaeologists concur that the skulls are a totally Mesoamerican wonder created by the Olmec people's hands and ideas. Today, the heads are on exhibit in museums throughout Mexico, attracting large throngs of tourists. Some copies have even been shipped overseas as old cultural icons, but their actual enigma remains. Why did the CH invest so much? These massive statues took a lot of work to create. Are they religious icons or the hallmark of special San Lorenzo rituals? The culture has been extinct for about 2,900 years, but the heads of quiet giants remain. They continue to stand as a tribute to the inventiveness and unresolved issues of Veracruz under the sun and wind. Secrets of a society that influenced Mesopotamian history. America's enigma surrounding the 1933 Los Lunas Decalogue stone. On a parched slope, archaeologist Frank Hibben of the University of New Mexico was taken to a location approximately 35 miles south of the town of Los Lunas. Halfway up was a huge boulder of basalt that weighed about 80 tons. The slope, which was more than 400 feet high, and one of its smooth faces was entirely covered in strange lettering. When Hibben got to the boulder, it was marked with 9 lines of lettering that were nearly impossible to read because of the lichen and aging marks. However, after careful examination, he recognized that they were characters that resembled Paleo-Hebrew, an old Hebrew alphabet that dates back to the 10th century BCE. After translation, the inscription was found to be essentially a synopsis of the 10 Commandments. The stone instantly sparked debate since it had 4 references to God, much like in Judaism. It was a genuine antique artifact, indicating that Semitic people arrived in the Americas long before Columbus, questioning the entire accepted historical record. But the enigma didn't stop there. The figures etched on the boulder is an odd blend of largely Paleo-Hebrew and some Greek-like letters that suggest later, maybe during Alexander the Great's reign. Linguist Cyrus Gordon once suggested that this may have been a sizable Decalogue tablet-like to those that were formerly positioned at synagogues or households' entrances, but other academics disagreed. They pointed out that the language and idioms did not align with Samaritan customs and lacked some important facts regarding the construction of a temple on Mount Gerizim. Numerous scholars have questioned the stone's legitimacy. Given that the inscription is riddled with linguistic errors, some academics think it might just be a contemporary fabrication. Errors, strange punctuation, and a haphazard letter combination that doesn't match any known ancient text. There are even rumors that two University of New Mexico students carved the stone in 1930 as a practical joke on Hibben. Following their 1953 investigation, archaeological investigators determined that the natural patina on the stone's surface was partially obscured by the inscriptions, indicating that the engravings might have been created lately. Nevertheless, others continue to support the notion that the stone is far older than skeptics. They think that the weathering of the destroyed luna's inscription was previously likened by geologist George Mohouse to contemporary graffiti on the mountaintop and noticed a noticeable change that suggested the stone might be between 500 and 2,000 years old. Although his opinions have not been widely accepted, researcher Barry Fell claimed that some of the punctuation truly corresponds with ancient manuscripts, generally acknowledged. But what exactly is the missing lunar Decalogue stone? Is it an ancient Semitic artifact that has vanished from the Americas, or a clever 20th century hoax? The lost lunar stone is a cunning 20th century hoax that continues to draw scholars and mystery seekers, whether it is real or not. Inquisitive tourists that up the slope to witness the Costa's mystery for themselves. Imagine being inside the Jade Museum in San Jose, Costa Rica is encircled by tiny, expertly carved jade figures, each barely a few centimeters tall. Some of them take the form of humans with feathered headdresses, owls with big round eyes, or enigmatic beings that are half human and half animal. They come from the indigenous tribes of Costa Rica and date back to approximately 500 BCE. Prior to 700 CE, they were more than just decorations. They were also signs of authority, faith, and a connection to the gods. But something particularly odd is that Costa Rica lacks jade, which is the only source of this stone is around 600 meters away in Guatemala's Montagua River Valley. Thus, how did these valuable jade blocks ever make it to Costa Rica? In 1939, archaeologist Doris Stone had started cataloging jade relics from old communities and graveyards. By 1977, the Jade Museum was founded in San Jose. It currently holds around 7,000 objects, including jade figurines. The elite and tribal leaders wore figurines mostly as jewelry. One common design is the axe deity pendant, which is shaped like a person or bird etched onto an axe blade. Some are carved like owls, frogs, or snakes, which are emblems of fertility. Unfortunately, the traditional method of producing jade is still a secret. Jade has a very difficult ranking between 6 and 7 on the MO scale. Therefore, intricate techniques were needed to mold the ancient Costa Ricans into a distinct form. Some pieces of stone can be carved with curved lines using the string saw technique, which uses rope and abrasive powder. The best pieces utilized in the Denver Museum's feathered headdress pendant are believed to have taken years to assemble. Guatemalan blue-green jade, but more popular varieties were fashioned from regional greenstones such as serpentine. The fact that jade is found in Costa Rica indicates that there is a vast trading network that stretches from Central America to Costa Rica. In order to bring jade back, traders may have bartered with a Maya or Olm between the 3rd century BCE and the 8th century CE to have it turned into sculptures. Around 700 CE, commercial hubs such as the Mayan metropolis of Copan fell, and the jade supply eventually dried up and was replaced with gold. There are differing opinions about the actual significance of these jade statues. Some academics stress that they were religious icons intended to establish a connection with the gods or ancestors. Considering the feathered headdress figures as representations of authority and leadership in their social position, there are even ideas that South American cultures affected their style, but no archaeological proof has supported this same concept. But the Eltonin antenna's mystery. Originally an icebreaker in the U.S. Navy, Elton was not your typical ship. The purpose of the Elenin, the first oceanographic research ship dedicated to Antarctic exploration, was to gather samples from the ocean and take pictures of previously undiscovered vistas located far beneath thousands of meters of water. During one such voyage, The ship took a picture at a depth of around 4,000 meters that startled the public and scientific community. When an image showed an odd item standing upright on the bleak ocean floor, standing roughly 1.6 to 6 meters tall and resembling a vertical column. At first view, it appeared to be a contemporary television antenna or something similar, with branches that were evenly spaced and ended in a little sphere. It seemed like some kind of cutting-edge technology at the time. No man-made equipment could be positioned at such a depth. So what was this? The picture swiftly surfaced in the New Zealand Herald with the caption "Mystery Image from the Ocean Below" and instantly generated a lot of conjecture among conspiracy theorists and UFO researchers. According to theorists, this was an extraterrestrial relic that may have been positioned on the ocean floor to observe Earth or speak with some people from other civilizations. Some even believe that the antenna was situated on an old planetary grid connected to enigmatic cycles of the planet and associated it with figures such as 144, which some people believe were related to the speed of light. Although not everyone accepted the paranormal hypotheses. In 1971, according to oceanographers Bruce Heen and Charles Hollister in their book The Face of the Deep, the Cladorisocon cretans, a carnivorous sponge, was the actual object in the picture. They noted that this species resembles the Elton antenna quite a bit. For instance, an example by Alexander Agassiz' 1888 painting, despite the fact that this sponge appears to be quite identical to a contemporary microwave tower. This explanation of why the Altonan science team hadn't identified it as a sponge satisfied everyone immediately, in addition to the fact that these sponges usually reside in groups. The Allen object stood alone. Its shape appeared to be too symmetrical, too solid, and much more like a piece of technology than a genuine creature. The tail just got bigger and more enigmatic. When researcher Tom Deary verified in 2003 that the item was, in fact, a sponge, but since this information appeared to be limited to scientific circles, numerous individuals questioned whether there was an attempt to conceal the Elton antenna's actual nature. To this day, the location where the item was photographed is still among the most hostile and most unreachable parts of the world. Some people think that if it was a mystery piece of technology, it might have been eliminated or hidden. Then what exactly was the Elton antenna? Was it a misinterpreted deep-sea organism or a forgotten technology? In the summer of 2016, the Russian megasphere's enigma was solved. While searching for coal on Russia's Champ Island, a team of miners made an astonishing discovery. They discovered dozens of large stone spheres, some up to 4 meters in diameter, were strewn throughout the frozen ground, producing a spectacular sight. They were larger than nearly every known naturally occurring stone sphere. But what really astounded them was how smooth they were. A few of them had broken open, yet their surfaces were nearly flawless, as though they had been painstakingly made. Locals may see concentric layers within that resemble enormous marbles that developed millions of years ago. They dubbed them Seda, and shortly after, rumors about the Russian megaspheres began to circulate. Champ Island is a very hostile location where snow and ice cover the ground and temperatures can dip below 30 degrees Celsius. The land is almost year-round, but these enormous orbs emerge on the desolate Earth during the brief summer months as the ice melts. Scientists from the Russian Institute of Geology were immediately drawn to the discovery after learning that the spheres were the outcome of mineral formations known as concretion that formed in old sea sediments. On the calcite and silica grains progressively accumulated around a tiny core on the seafloor millions of years ago, generating concentric rock layers to produce perfect spheres throughout time. Other regions of the world exhibit geological phenomena, such as the Mora boulders in New Zealand, which are stones on the coast. But both their size and quantity make Champ Island exceptional. Many of them are twice as big as those found elsewhere, and some appear almost purposefully placed, making one wonder if nature could produce something so perfect. Or could there have been a guiding hand? Within weeks, mystery and conspiracy theories started to circulate on social media web pages. Some individuals likened the megaspheres to the South African Klerksdorp spheres, which are thought to be millions of years old. Geologist Andre even claims that some of them are billions of years old and even exhibit evidence of being sculpted by sentient hands. Researcher Eric, who conducted research on Champ Island, once said, "They appear too flawless to be merely a natural phenomenon. Yet if not, then who created them, and how? Inquiries such as these just serve to increase the mystery surrounding the megaspheres. Many scientists are still wary, arguing that erosion just brought about the spheres to the surface. According to the tale, these spheres are just one of the many natural wonders that our planet has produced. The mystery became more obscure in 2018 after an amateur mission visited Champ Island to observe the megaspheres firsthand. They observed that just tapping on a few of the spheres created a hollow, bell-like ringing sound. Some hypotheses even suggested that the spheres were remnants of an old civilization, as evidenced by their ringing sound. They were planned for special events. Some questioned, are these really natural? Why do they occasionally sit in circles and clusters? Additional investigation into the megaspheres has been restricted by the Franz Josef Land, where Champ Island located has a harsh temperature and an isolated position, which makes things more difficult. It was formerly a classified Soviet military area where some of the biggest nuclear bomb testing in history took place. This history, which includes the SAR bomber explosion, has only made things more mysterious, with many people thinking that the real origins of these stone spheres may still be unaware. The Red Deer Cave residents. In 1979, a petroleum geologist in the Guangxi province of China discovered an unexpected block of unique human, animal, and charcoal-charred bones found among the silt in that block. Clay transferred the entire block to the Yunnan Provincial Museum in Kuning for additional research after realizing this could be significant research. 10 years later, in 1989, archaeologists started excavating at a second cave close to Mangxi. As they excavated, they discovered more human remains, stone tools, and a cave in Yunnan that was named Red Deer Cave. Numerous charred red deer bones were found here, indicating that the local population once hunted and consumed red deer. Consequently, they were dubbed the Red Deer Cave people, but the true riddle didn't emerge until 2008, when a group of foreign scientists under the direction of G.I. Shuing and Darren Kerno began a more thorough research. These bones were found to be between 17,800 and 11,500 years old, indicating that these individuals lived at the very end of the ice period. It seemed odd that the skeletons of people who shared many characteristics with old humans have flat skulls, large noses, protruding jaws, thick brow ridges, and solid skull bones. They look like the ancient human species Homo erectus, which lived in Africa over a million years ago. But the Red Deer Cave people coexisted with modern humans at the same time, when the first farming societies emerged. In 2010, archaeologists in China discovered a little thigh bone that resembled Homo erectus thigh bones in appearance and had a thin outer coating. The individual to whom it belonged would have weighed just roughly 50 kilograms. When these results were released in 2012, the scientific community was taken aback. According to Kerno and his group, this could be a new species of human or the offspring of an ancient human group. Some believe these folks might be the outcome of those who survived because they were isolated in the southwestern Chinese mountains. The Highlanders might be a result of mingling with another ancient group, such as the Denisovans, a mystery kind of human exclusively identified by DNA, who formerly inhabited numerous locations throughout Asia. According to another version, the Highlands turned into a safe haven for prehistoric people, much like the hobbits did on the Indonesian island of Flores. But not everyone agreed. Cambridge University evolutionary scientist Martha Morazan-Laub believed that the Red Deer Cave people were just contemporary humans with peculiar characteristics who evolved in a limited society. She argued that strange characteristics in people may not necessarily indicate the emergence of a new species. But in 2015, when the research team re-examined the thigh bone, they discovered that it was not within the range of variation for contemporary people. This indicated an earlier origin, indicating a migration from Africa that predated modern humanity. Around 60,000 years ago, everything changed when Chinese researchers successfully sequenced a portion of the Maludong skull's DNA in 2022. The outcomes were surprising. The Red Deer Cave people were modern humans who shared a close kinship with both East Asians and Native Americans. The skull belonged to a woman who may have been the first person to cross the Bering Strait into the Americas. But it's still unclear whether the Red Deer Cave people were hybrids or a new species, Why did they exhibit characteristics similar to those of ancient humans who had previously vanished? And how did they manage to survive next to them? This tale of contemporary societies at the end of the Ice Age serves as a reminder that human history is filled with complexity and the fact that many enigmatic caves in Asia still conceal mysteries that no one has yet discovered. The Indus Valley Writing, a mystery that has been unanswered for over 4,000 years. A powerful ancient civilization once flourished over the wide plains surrounding the Indus River, the location of major cities like Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, where streets are lined with planned drainage systems that were significantly more advanced than that of the majority of the era civilizations. Although one aspect of the Indus people's writing system that archaeologists and historians are still unable to understand is what archaeologists initially found. Little stone seals inscribed with enigmatic symbols in the late 19th century. Individuals have been inquiring about the meaning of these signs and the narrative they convey. These seals, which have a vibrant culture, are frequently barely bigger than the palm of a hand and have animal carvings on their surfaces. Researchers have gathered around 4,000 of these seals thus far, but not a single human or any of the other weird symbols. The Indus symbols are genuinely unique and unlike any other ancient writing system that has ever been read. Chinese, Egyptian, or Mesopotamian, most lines only have 3 to 5 individuals. However, there aren't any lengthy scenes or distinct storylines. These carefully carved symbols demonstrate how important information recording was to the ancient inhabitants. Many hypotheses have been put forth to help us comprehend the meaning of each character, if we are still unable to do so today. Some academics think it might be a type of syllabic writing like Egyptian hieroglyphs or Sumerian script. They believe that the symbols stand for ideas, akin to the old Chinese ideograms. There is even a belief that the Indus symbols were used to identify products or families and were never intended to be actual writing. Over the past century, numerous attempts have been made to decode the script used in religious or commercial events. The largest obstacle is that no bilingual inscription, similar as the Rosetta Stone, has ever been discovered, which aided in decoding with Egyptian hieroglyphs. It is considerably more difficult because of the small number of symbols and the brief inscriptions. The odd thing about comparing and analyzing the characters is that, even though society advanced significantly after the Indus, around 1900 BC, their society fell apart, leaving behind no remnants of their language or script. It appeared to have entirely disappeared, and many scholars think that if the Indus script is ever decoded, we would discover more about their beliefs, daily activities, and possibly even the causes of such a strong civilization that vanished so abruptly. But those tiny seals with their enigmatic markings will continue to be silent until that day, preserving the narrative of one of the most mysterious civilizations in history. The secrets of the Giraffe civilization. A massive flood in the Hale River Valley in southeast Iran in 2001 completely altered the course of this normally tranquil river. As the waves subsided, it carried away soil layers, revealing a mystery that had been hidden for thousands of years. There was a huge old cemetery with thousands of graves, but many of them had already been unearthed by robbers. Soon, odd finds started to appear on the antiques market, including beautiful jade bracelets with elaborate carvings and drinking vessels, gemstone-studded weaponry, and game boards. Nobody was aware of the origins until Iranian police had taken action by the end of 2001. They apprehended several smugglers and confiscated a sizable accumulation of artifacts in Thrawn. The trail returned directly to the Halil Valley, which is a peaceful area close to the city of Garufte. When archaeologists arrived in the area near the Persian Gulf, they were astounded to discover that this was no typical burial site. Buried beneath the surface were remnants of a Bronze Age society that flourished between 2500 and 2200 BCE. 2 man-made mounds nearby, with advanced towns and possibly even their own separate writing system, provided new, shocking evidence. Archaeologists discovered a large stronghold and an old ceremonial building at Garufte. A 2-horned person grappling with snakes was shown in a chlorite stone vase, a scene evocative of ancient Sumerian mythology. A heavy stone that may have been used as a weight was etched with pictures of people domesticating wild animals, which is a prevalent Bronze Age motif. Architecturally resembling cylindrical jars with columns and little ziggurats were modeled after palace facades. Isef Mujid, an archaeologist from ancient Mesopotamia, even proposed that Geruft was an ancient area that may be the mythical land of Eritrea, which is said to be extremely wealthy in Sumerian stories. Possibly the oldest Elamite writing yet discovered. This block inscribed with geometric figures is said to be the actual cause of irregular script. However, numerous academics like Oscar Muscarella emphasize that more substantial evidence is still needed to support these statements, which becomes even more intriguing when you take into account their scope. Kona Sandal B rises to a height of 21 meters, and below it are the remains of a huge Kona Sandal A less than a two-story fortress with brick walls up to 11 meters thick. There is a ceremonial structure a mile away that may have been a large temple since 2014, according to international archaeological teams. When Italian, French, and German teams visited Geruft, they found indications of residential areas and historic workshops. The most remarkable of which are the cylinder seals discovered here, which are exactly like those in Mesopotamia, suggesting a highly developed trading and administration system. But not everyone thinks Geruft was an independent civilization. Some scholars contend that Geruft was merely a commercial hub that was greatly impacted by nearby cultures. The cross-cultural items discovered here come from cultures like Elam to the west or the Indus Valley to the east. They support this opinion despite continuing scholarly discussions. The enigma of Geruft is still unsolved. If this location was indeed the birthplace of a great civilization, perhaps the 2001 flood is what caused it to be forgotten for 5,000 years. The flood was a pivotal moment that unintentionally restored the mysteries of a long-lost world to the light. It teaches us that there are always mysteries and unsolved issues in human history. Sometimes all it takes is an unexpected flood to uncover a once thriving civilization that vanished into obscurity. Eastern Europe's unresolved riddle is the Tartaria tablets, a little village in Romania's Transylvania region in the summer of 1961. As they delved further into a Neolithic settlement, archaeologist Nicolae Velasa and his crew were excavating a ritual hole. A bizarre tableau gradually emerged. They found 26 figurines made of clay and stone, as well as a bracelet constructed from seashells and the burned remains of an adult, indicated that this individual might have been a shaman or someone of particular importance. But what really astounded the group were 3 tiny, sculpted clay tablets, each measuring only roughly 6 centimeters in length with enigmatic markings. In particular, 2 tablets, one round and one rectangular, had holes bored through them as though they were worn or hung up. These clay tablets, now known as the Tartaria tablets, generated shockwaves through the earth. One tablet depicts an animal with horns, and the markings on it appear to be an alien type of writing. Aside from what looks to be a tree or a leafy branch, the other 2 are crowded with different abstract symbols. They have geometric designs, and what's particularly striking is how much these symbols mimic the Vanga symbol system from a prehistoric civilization that existed in Romania between 4,500 and 3,700 BCE. But what really sets them apart is the controversy around the age of the Tartaria tablets. Based on the artifacts and soil layer where they were discovered, some researchers think these tablets may have been created as early as 5,300 BCE. If this is the case, it would be Eastern Europe, predating Egyptian hieroglyphs and Sumerian cuneiform by at least a millennium. Although not everyone agrees, Mesopotamia may have been the site of the world's earliest writing system. According to this explanation, the tablets were burnt at high temperatures when Velasa sent them to the Cluj Museum for preservation. He unintentionally eliminated any chance of direct carbon-14 dating, which has sparked a heated discussion among academics about the question around the tablet's actual age. It grew as academics started contrasting the Tartaria tablets with comparable artifacts. According to some linguists, these artifacts may be connected to linear transcripts or even the model for script on the island of Cyprus. But the Vanga system's symbols have never been deciphered by anyone. There are nearly as many signs as Egyptian hieroglyphs, with approximately 700 recorded, which led some linguists, like Harmon, to think that this was a real writing system that was used to document ceremonies or commercial transactions. But since all of the inscriptions are so brief, they are quite challenging to read. Some people even have more audacious beliefs. The Tat-Arya tablets provide proof of a secret society whose writing predates Sumer, but was either forgotten or purposefully omitted from history. Although there isn't any concrete evidence to support this theory, it nonetheless piques interest in an ancient Eastern Europe, which may have previously flourished before fading into obscurity. Some have even attempted to connect the Magua symbols. However, these theories are strongly contested because of the dearth of supporting data. The 10,000-year-old dwarf skeleton that was discovered in China has sparked inquiries about a story that experts are still unable to fully explain. The story starts in 2007 in an area close to the Yellow River in east-central China, when archaeologists were excavating an old burial site. They discovered several bones from the Yangsha culture that date back between 5,000 and 7,000 years. They had been placed on their chests in a gesture of respect for the community, yet stood out amid these common remains. One little, odd skeleton was the one that this person was placed to rest apart, with both hands concealed behind the back, perhaps to distinguish them from the others. Following the research, scientists studying the remains found that this skeleton was even older than the others nearby, indicating that the deceased had resided at the site around 10,000 years ago, toward the end of the Neolithic period. An archaeologist noticed the shape of the skeleton. This person had proportional dwarfism, which means that although their body was little, all of their proportions were balanced. This differs from the more prevalent types found today. Based on the teeth and bones, this young adult was between 16 and 20 years old when they died, and their thin bones and osteoporosis symptoms suggested that life was everything from simple. Among the tens of thousands of ancient remains found worldwide, less than 40 cases of dwarfism have ever been documented, making this one of the oldest that science has discovered. Researchers questioned how a person so little and frail could live in a hunter-gatherer culture where physical strength was nearly necessary for survival. In order to discover the solution, experts studied the fact for over 10 years. For example, the team thoroughly inspected the teeth, x-rayed the bones, and assessed the physical development before coming to a conclusion that the person had pituitary dwarfism or hypothyroidism from a young age, which led to a little size. But how did this individual actually survive in a culture where being different may result in exclusion from the funeral? The hands concealed behind the back itself begged additional questions. Was this a unique custom or message of exclusion? Being buried with the community may indicate that the deceased was still respected or possibly had a particular position in society. According to some academics, individuals who were unusual in ancient China may have been respected for their gifts or intelligence. Did they play a spiritual role, or were they a shaman? Another opinion is that genetics in a small, remote society where inherited circumstances were more prevalent led to the development of the dwarf skeleton. Probably. But later historical records demonstrate that minors were occasionally subjected to inhumane treatment or possibly slavery in royal courts. Bold theories have surfaced regarding the skeleton that go beyond scientific investigation. Some have connected it to stories of small people in Asian mythology could be proof of a remote ancient group or possibly the remnants of a separate human species. Although there is no concrete proof for these claims, they pose a significant wonder how many mysteries there are in human history that we haven't yet solved. What's really amazing is that the 10,000-year-old dwarf skeleton is not only an archaeological treasure, but it also provides insight into the diversity of ancient humanity. The ability of such a tiny person to coexist and be buried with the society demonstrates humanity. Perhaps the tales of acceptance and willpower suggest that society was more tolerant in those days than we realize. The vanished city of Pavlo-Petri has existed for a far longer period of time than the recorded record. A thriving metropolis used to stand on the coasts of Greece 5,000 years ago, when the earliest civilizations were only beginning to emerge, before the sea abruptly engulfed the region, bringing its roadways with it. The oldest was Pavlo-Petri, which had homes and tombs all the way down to the ocean floor. The story of the first subterranean city ever found by humans starts in 1904 when a Greek geologist first observed strange lines beneath the water on the southern tip of the Peloponnese Peninsula, close to Vatican Bay. But it wasn't until 1967 that Nicholas Fleming, a marine archaeologist, went back to examine the location where, only a few meters from the coast, the mystery of Pavlo-Petri was revealed. The remnants of a metropolis that had been submerged by the water for thousands of years were discovered in 1968 by a crew from Cambridge University. After carefully mapping the area, they discovered more than 37 historic graves and a system of streets. Pavlo Petri was found to have existed as early as 3,500 years ago based on pottery shards, stone tools, and other artifacts. The reason Pavlo Petri is the oldest submerged settlement ever discovered is because of BC. The city's very flawless preservation beneath ocean and sand layers is astonishing. It yet retains over 9 acres of well-planned street grid, 2-story homes with gardens, and a sizable central plaza. Additionally, archaeologists discovered a sophisticated water system with pipelines and channels made of ceramics from site weaving frames. Experimental instruments demonstrated that Pavlo Petri was once a bustling hub for textiles and trade. But the biggest enigma is why. After the sea engulfed this meticulously constructed metropolis, it was never reconstructed, despite decades of efforts by experts to respond to this query. In 2009, a University of Nottingham research team collaborating with the Greek Ministry of Culture to produce a 3D map of the entire city using sonar and underwater robotics. They found thousands of square meters of brand new buildings, including streets and huge halls that had never been seen before. These findings demonstrated that the city continued to grow from the Neolithic to the Menian periods. Despite the findings, the cause of Pavlo Petri's submersion is still unknown. But numerous explanations have been put out. Some people think a number of earthquakes caused the ground to sink, particularly those that occurred around 1000 BC or 375 AD. Others contend that the city to flood the Peloponnese is known for its seismic activity, which lends credence to this theory. The settlement was gradually submerged by rising sea levels and sinking soil. When Pavlo Petri was first constructed, it was standing around 3 m above sea level. But flooding was already a possibility by 12,200 BC. Some even connect Pavlo Petri to the myth of Atlantis because this city existed before Plato's tale of the lost continent, although the majority of academics believe that it is merely an intriguing coincidence. Others have proposed that political unrest like the Dorian invasion or economic collapse may have forced locals to leave before the last flood. Pavlo Petri is more than simply a remnant of the past. It's a doorway into a 5,000-year-old world. We observe a sophisticated culture and a thriving urban planning, water systems, and maritime commerce demonstrate that this was a highly structured town that faced the notion that people in that time period only lived in little villages. But it's still unclear why there was a thriving metropolis. Did its inhabitants escape calamity, or were they carried away by the sea forever? And how was it abandoned and never rebuilt? Pavlo Petri faces the fact that many other ancient towns are still silently resting beneath the sea, waiting to be discovered today. Even though this city is protected by UNESCO, it faces challenges from pollution, illegal relic hunting, and the effects of tourism. The odd symbols of the Gosford glyph serve as a reminder of how fragile our history is. Within Brisbane Water National Park, tucked away in a tiny sandstone CLFT in the Australian wilderness, more than 300 unusual symbols that resemble Egyptian hieroglyphs have surfaced. They relate tales of lost princes, ships, and gods stuck in a distant place. But how did these symbols make their way to Australia, hundreds of miles away from Giza? It is a mystery that has generated discussion among scholars worldwide. The narrative started in 1975 when a local surveyor found strange inscriptions in the rocks close to Caring, which is around 60 kilometers north of Sydney. The region was previously well known for Aboriginal rock art. Dash discovered 2 sandstones with completely different art engraved on them by the Guringai people. There were almost 300 Egyptian-looking symbols on 3.5-meter-high walls. Hieroglyphs, such as pictures of the god Anubis, ankh-shaped ships, and even King Khufu's name, who constructed the Giza pyramids. Dash even observed that new symbols seemed to have appeared every time he came to the site, which further raised the question of whether this was an old site or contemporary hoax that had been added to the stories of the Gosford glyphs. The engravings, which were made in a small rock crevice that could only be reached by climbing or scaffolding, describe an Egyptian fleet caught in a storm and its survivors arriving on a foreign shore. In documenting their narrative, they portrayed creatures such as hybrids, dogs, owls, and birds. Although the human and animal forms were reminiscent of ancient Egyptian art, some of the symbols were unique. Some appeared newly carved, but others were faded and weathered. The sculptures incorporated symbols from a variety of eras, such as those that emerged almost 2,000 years after King Khufu's death. Efforts to decipher these symbols have persisted for decades without producing any conclusive results. In 1983, art conservator David Lambert stated that some of the carvings were only a few months old, and Egyptologists like Macquarie University professor Boyo Anga denied their veracity, stating that the symbols did not adhere to Egyptian grammar and use a confused arrangement of symbols from many historical periods. Although there are still followers who consider this proof of an Egyptian journey to Australia 4,500 years ago to be accurate, despite the fact that no other ancient Egyptian artifacts have ever been discovered on the continent, numerous theories have been proposed regarding the Gosford glyphs. According to some theories, they were created by Australian soldiers who had been in Egypt during World War I as a joke or a tribute, while others believe they were made in the 1970s or 1980s by a group of supporters of its genuineness, including Alan Dash himself. He saw someone carve the rock in 1984. Note that certain glyphs, like the representation of Thoth as an ancient Egyptian, demonstrate a profound understanding of baboons that were not well known in the West in the early 20th century. Some attempted to connect the glyphs to Aboriginal people, but the fashion is very different, and some hypotheses even make reference to vanished civilizations or aliens. Despite the lack of concrete proof, the Gosford glyphs raise significant issues regarding history and veracity. If this is a fraud, why would someone spend years carving more than 300 symbols in a secluded rocky gorge? How could the Egyptians have traveled thousands of miles to Australia without leaving a trace elsewhere if it is an ancient monument? Regardless of the truth, the gospel glyphs serve as a reminder that there are always unresolved mysteries, and occasionally the things that are most mysterious are also the most compelling. The riddle of the spark plug in ancient stone and the delicate Koso item. When mankind was still hunter-gatherers thousands of years ago, nobody could have predicted that one day an enigma that would lead to unending discussion would surface from the old stone layers of the Koso Mountains in California. Between archaeologists and scientists on February 13, 1961, Wallace Lane, Virginia Maxey, and Mike Mixel, 3 rock searchers, discovered a rock while looking for quartz on a mountain more than 300 meters high close to Olange, California. They initially believed it was simply a regular geode, but Michael's diamond saw almost snapped when he attempted to cut it in half. Instead of a beautiful crystal, they discovered something extremely hard within that resembled a spark plug. Encased in solidified clay and a fossilized shell, a white ceramic cylinder encircles a gleaming metal rod. Later X-ray pictures showed an almost full internal structure, including a ceramic core, a copper ring, and a metal spring. Interestingly, the outside clay was thought to be similar to an automobile spark plug from the early 20th century. The Koso relic, which may have been as old as 500,000 years before modern humans even appeared, soon got the attention of geologists and archaeologists. The stone itself, which was a piece of petrified clay with a soft hexagonal layer surrounding it, was the subject of intense debate. In the middle of a ceramic cylinder was a metal rod that was only 2 millimeters thick and had not corroded after spending so much time surrounded by copper rings in a rock shell. All of these features, including the fact that it was still undamaged, make one wonder why it was discovered if it was a spark plug within what appeared to be hundreds of thousands of years old rock, and if it was some archaic technology, who could have created it? The Koso relic was transported to an unidentified facility for examination upon its discovery, where X-rays verified the object's spark plug-like structure, but independent experts never looked at it. Until 1969, the genuine artifact disappeared, leaving behind only a few hazy magazine images and contradictory reports, which only made the situation worse. In the decades that followed, numerous scientists attempted to unravel the mystery surrounding the Koso relic. Some geologists hypothesized that it was just a contemporary spark plug covered in clay by a natural process known as concretion, in which minerals and soil rapidly gather around an alien object. In reality, a number of different metal artifacts were discovered nearby at Owens Lake coated in similar substance. Skeptics claim that after just a few decades, it was only a mistake. Since no formal scientific report has ever verified the fossilized shell, proponents of the out-of-place artifact theory maintain that the Koso artifact is evidence of some kind of high technology prior to modern civilization. It is merely a deception or an odd coincidence of nature. But regardless of the justification, everyone admits that no one can confirm the accuracy because the original Koso relic, which is now only preserved in images and recollections, has long since vanished. The riddle of the Koso artifact continues to pique our interest by asking why. If it is a recent spark plug, it was buried in what looks to be hundreds of thousands of years old rock. Why is there no other proof of such a civilization if it is thousands of years old and the result of ancient technology? Furthermore, the Koso artifact reminds us of how many details could align so flawlessly if it's all a coincidence. It teaches us that there are always unsolved questions in history, whether they are found in the untamed mountains or deep within the soil. There might be undiscovered facts about our own past that are poised to challenge everything we believe to be true. If you like these stories, we appreciate you coming along on this quest to solve humanity's biggest riddles. Comment below with your ideas, and don't forget to subscribe and enable notifications so you won't miss any of the mysteries in our upcoming episodes. We'll see you on the next journey.